Hello and welcome to this very special chat as we celebrate International Women in Engineering Day with a very special panel of engineers from the Mercedes-AMG Petronas Formula One team. And we're going to be joined with members from organisations such as Dare to Be Different and Girls on Track, and several of you from secondary schools as well. We want you to send in lots of questions, so get writing in the Q&A box and we'll do our best to answer them over the next half an hour or so. We've got plenty of time to chat through things. But first, let's introduce our special panelists this morning. I'm going to start with Amber, who's a graduate test and development engineer, Elsa, a composite design engineer, Emma, reliability engineer, Jess, structural system engineer, and Rachel, a materials science engineer. It's great to have you all with us. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk through a little bit about your journey and your career so far. And I'll come to you, Jess, first. I just wonder what inspired you to get into engineering.
I'm quite a curious person, and as a child I used to take things apart and try and work out how they go back together, mainly failing. So I thought, let's go into engineering and work out how it's properly done. My parents also took me to a local motorsport track called Shelsley Welsh, which is a hill climb, and I just thought, if you can be an engineer, you can learn to design and test these really fast cars, so why not? And then it was actually Silverstone, I think 2008, for my 18th birthday, it just confirmed that I saw the guys in the garage and I was like, I just want to do that, and I haven't looked back ever since.
How brilliant. Well, we'll come on to a bit more about your story a little bit later on. Amber, what about you? What inspired you to give engineering a go and ultimately make it your career?
I come from a bit of a background in engineering. My brother was a skilled road car technician. My dad is an electrical engineer turned project engineer, and my mum was always a project manager for engineering firms, so I've kind of grew up with it a bit. My brother's a full petrol head as well, so I'd watch him taking cars apart from outside my house. Much like Jess, I had a thing for taking things apart when I was a kid, so there was just bits of pens everywhere generally, but that's really where it stemmed from. And then working with Lego and just building things, it's sort of trying to understand how things work. And then
No, I was just going to say, you really had no choice. You were kind of in that environment early on. It was kind of the family business almost.
Yeah, almost. My brother sort of, because he would watch Formula One and rally cars and other things, the interest spiked from there. And as much as I enjoyed taking things apart, I didn't actually realise that that's quite what I wanted to do. And then I went to Goodwood Festival of Speed in 2016, and much like Jess, I saw it was Lewis doing the hill climb at the time, and I managed to get to speak to a few people from Mercedes factory at the hill climb, and yeah, I just fully fangirled. And that was it, the bug for it, and I needed to do it.
That's an awesome way to find out that's what you want to be doing. Rachel, what about you? Did you have a moment where you saw motorsport in action or somebody doing some engineering that you thought, hang on, that's something I want to get into?
Actually, at school, we had a program called Green Power. So we all build an electric car that we race around different tracks, like around the country and against all the different schools. And it was kind of an endurance race. And that kind of got me into getting into that. Originally, they just saw me, oh, you're short, you can be a driver. Then I actually quite liked the building side of it, and I was really interested in how they put that car together. And then, yeah, so that got me into F1 and cars and things like that, plus liking science.
I love that. You can be the driver. You're like, no, I want to be powering the car along. I want to be building things. Emma, you're a reliability engineer. Let's talk a little bit about what that job involves and what you love about it. What's your favourite part of the job?
Reliability means that you're doing something slightly different every day. At the moment, because we haven't got anything out on track, we've got lots of kind of long-term projects in the background just to try and support our designers and our test facilities to make sure everything they're doing is producing results and final components that will be as 100% reliable as we can try to get it. But when we're racing, we switch. There's 4 of us in the team, and we switch who's going to races. So some weekends we'll be at the track, other times we'll be supporting from the factory. And trackside, we are probably the most paranoid person there. We're checking everything, we're listening to the mechanics talking, we're listening to the engineers, trying to pick up on problems while they're still developing before they turn into a great big puddle on the floor or a great big fire. I like to avoid fires.
I think everyone does.
It's really rewarding because sometimes you can see from a tiny fault that you've spotted through to the way that it has been fixed in the long term, and you know that by finding it so early on, you know that it's never going to happen out on track and cause us to not finish a race. So the best part is every race that we finish, because that's the ultimate goal of our job. We never want to see our car pulled up to the side of the track. So yeah, every time it crosses the finish line is the best part.
A reliability engineer, that's not something someone says to you in a careers department or in a lesson at school. So how did you know that as you get into engineering, that's kind of where you want to head?
It wasn't where I thought I wanted to head. I knew when I was doing my degree that I didn't want to be a designer. I've never been one to draw something from scratch, but I am one to pick something up and go, oh, that's a bit rubbish. Why can't you make it a bit better? Why can't you do it this way? But yeah, I don't have the right sort of brain to build something up from scratch. And reliability was quite boring. I was made redundant from one F1 team, saw the reliability role and thought, I'm sure I can do that. And luckily they believed me. Now I'm into it. I really enjoy it. There's not many people would want to work initially in reliability because you have to have quite a thick skin. As most of the time you're going to walk up to someone and go, your part's broken, or I think your part is going to break. So you have to be on the charm offensive quite a lot of the time, but then you also have to be not afraid to walk up to a designer and go, no, you really need to fix this now. But it's never ending. As much as we would like to be completely 100% reliable, there's always kind of the next thing on the horizon, or the next thing that's been working fine for 4 years and suddenly decides that it doesn't want to work that way anymore. So yeah, there's always something new to do.
Gosh, I can imagine it's not great being the bearer of bad news in a team like Mercedes. Elsa, you did want to go into design. You're a composite design engineer. Tell us about what inspired you to get into that side of things.
So at school, I absolutely loved science and I liked maths, but I also really liked being creative. So I really enjoyed art and all that sort of thing. And I didn't want to just choose between being a scientist or being an artist. And I realised that as an engineer, you can actually combine science and creativity, which is for me perfect. So as a designer, I take basically different maybe aerodynamic surfaces or something provided to us, and then you have to use problem solving skills and understanding of the materials and all of these different things, and use that to basically come up with a design of your part.
And did you find at school or at college that they sort of painted that picture that, yes, you can combine arts and science and marry the two together?
No, it was always either you do academic, sciencey type things, or you do artistic type things. And I never really realised until later that you could mix the two. And I think I overheard a conversation of someone talking about engineering at a careers fair, and I kind of thought, oh, maybe that could be for me. And I kind of went home and looked it up on the internet, and I must have been about 17 at the time, so quite late on as well. And I looked up and I thought, that's what I want to do.
God, how lucky that you were there, being able to eavesdrop on a conversation. We've had some questions in already. Thank you so much. As I said at the beginning, if you've got any questions that you'd like to ask our wonderful panelists, please do put them in the Q&A box. We've had one in from our anonymous attendee. They want to know what your biggest challenge has been in your career so far. So Jess, what about you? What have you found difficult, but maybe you've managed to overcome and therefore feel really good about yourself?
I'll probably say two things. So I'm dyslexic, which actually helps engineering, I think, but it does bring some kind of learning difficulties and things like that along with that. But I just persevered and tried my best. Unfortunately, when I was at school and university and things like that, there was a lot of negativity around girls and the kind of, why do you want to do that? That's not a girl's thing. At first it upset me and I felt like giving up. I felt, well, what's the point? And then actually my parents were quite supportive and they just said, look, turn that negativity into drive and into determination. And it's kept me going and it seems to have worked. The encouraging thing is that I haven't felt any of that at Mercedes. So I've gone straight from university to Mercedes, and I've stayed here ever since. And I've never once felt undermined, like not worthy. They just treat everyone as an engineer. So there's no discrimination or anything. So that's the kind of positive thing that school's wrong and people at school telling you can't do it. Just believe in yourself.
That's a big challenge to overcome quite early on when you're finding confidence as a person, not necessarily in your career, to be told that you can't do certain things. That's a big hurdle to overcome. So yeah, it's lovely to hear you talk about that. Amber, what about you? Have you faced challenges that sort of almost even before your career and also during your job?
So my biggest challenge was probably trying to enter F1. I studied in university in Belfast, and generally F1 teams have their chosen universities or sort of known routes, known paths for engineers. So for me, it was trying to break into the business, break into the motorsport industry, which turned out to just be speaking to people and looking for forums to see how you can apply for positions. So that was a bit of a challenge trying to actually get here. And once here, it sort of opened up a path to my university, which I then felt quite happy about. So I'm able to recommend as a good engineer in university and try and get more people that sound a bit more like me into the business. The biggest challenge since I've been here has probably been when I started as a graduate test and development engineer, and quite quickly was thrown into the deep end with commissioning rigs and big projects and project lead effectively. And I think here, I'm not quite strong with confidence. And so the way of dealing with that here was throw you in at the deep end and you sort of have to get on with it. So it was good to be able to go and speak to other people on site and ask questions. And like Jess, I've never felt any issue of being a female engineer here. If I go and ask somebody a question, they answer it and they're happy to. And I think that's something that I've actually realized more and more here, is that people prefer you to ask questions, and especially as engineers, because we all sort of tend to have an inquisitive mind. So generally, if you're bringing up a question, either somebody else has the answer for you or they're then interested in the answer as well. So you almost end up with lots of people involved. So I think that's been the biggest thing here, just being trusted with large projects, and that's quite a challenge.
It's interesting you talking about almost not feeling like you're ready for the challenge or not worthy almost. And perhaps there is a little bit of that with females and women working in sport and also in other industries, of not putting ourselves forward. We're a little bit late to this new amazing industry. We're a bit of a newcomer. And so perhaps we feel less entitled, or we don't feel enabled to put ourselves forward. Rachel, have you felt that at any point, that perhaps you sort of hold back saying how good you actually are or could be on a project?
Yeah, I definitely feel that at times. I get, from outside of the F1 world, I get a lot of, oh, you're an engineer, but that's kind of like mostly for guys, isn't that? And like, especially in F1, a lot of like, oh, they must have loved your CV because you're a female, and kind of things like that. So you get like both ends of, oh, you're only doing it, like you only got there because you're a girl, or you're
box ticking or something like that.
You're not worthy of it because you are a girl. So it's definitely, you do get those, oh, you don't know that much about a car because you're a girl kind of thing, and things like that. So, but really it is just more, it shows, for my role, it's more important to know about the actual knowledge of like the materials instead of the actual car. So because I'm interested in those materials, I can then now apply it. And I just keep on having to remind myself, no, it is a role for me. I definitely can do this, things like that. So yeah, you definitely do feel that at times, but you just got to give yourself that boost of confidence that, no, this is for you.
This is my job. This is what I do best.
Just do it to everyone else, and then soon they'll understand.
Exactly. And it's difficult though, isn't it, when you're watching something like Formula One, which is, we can watch and sit in on a Sunday afternoon and watch the race. If you're not seeing women in the roles that you're thinking you might like to do. It's difficult then to imagine yourself in that position. So Emma, did you have someone that you saw potentially on television in the F1 world that you thought, oh my goodness, there is somebody doing what I can do? Or did you know of stories of other people that you looked up to?
Unfortunately not. So I decided to go from one extreme to the other. So I went to an all-girls school and then applied to do an engineering degree. There were only 4 girls in my first year, and then 2 of them dropped out. And in my master's, I was the youngest person on the course and the only girl. So I'd kind of got used to really quickly being completely surrounded by guys. But for the engineering degree, they were all, well, we were all kids just there to learn. And it wasn't, oh, you're a girl, what are you doing here? Because we all needed each other to do study sessions with and seminars and things. So the person who inspired me to decide to work in F1, I was going for one really hard thing and switched to something else really hard. So I initially wanted to be a vet. Realised quite quickly I wasn't going to get anywhere near good enough grades in chemistry in order to be able to do it. So I thought another really easy thing to go and do would be engineering. But I didn't realise I could do it with the A-levels I was studying until I used to read F1 Racing cover to cover, every single word. And they had an interview with Mario Tyson, who used to be the director of BMW Motorsport. And he listed out the engineering degrees that he had done, which made me go and research on the UCAS website. And I thought I couldn't do engineering because I wasn't doing A-level maths. But there are these amazing things called foundation degrees where as long as you have passed your A-levels, and believe me, you can pass your A-levels with some fairly bad grades and still take the foundation of engineering course. And it's a real test of your dedication right then, because foundation degree is really hard. It's 1 year where you do the equivalent of maths, further maths, physics, electronics and fundamental mechanics in about 7 months. So that was a good test of how badly do I really want to work in Formula One? Quite badly. And then from then on, there was nothing that was going to stop me from getting into F1, not once you've survived doing that.
How amazing. I love that though, because that shows that you had the interest. You took the time to read F1 Racing. You took the time to really invest in the articles that you were reading and then noted it down and went off and did extra work. So it is about hard work. It's not just about sort of chancing upon an opportunity. You kind of have to put all those things in place so that you can make it happen. I love those kind of stories. We've had a great question in from Louise McGrath. Great to have you watching along. Thank you so much, Louise. Her question is, what extracurricular activities or experiences can you recommend for someone who wants to do what you do? So how can you kind of boost your CV and also your knowledge and your experience? Elsa, what do you recommend?
So I think the biggest thing that most people have done is Formula Student, which is a university project, which I think most universities have a team in the UK, and you basically design a mini Formula car from scratch, and then you take it and you can race it at Silverstone and you can take it to other countries to compete. But the other thing is when looking at recruiting people, we're not just looking at people that have done engineering things in their spare time. We're also looking at other stuff. Like, for example, I did kickboxing at university and I got really into that. And I was the women's captain and did a lot of management of the club and that sort of thing. And so that shows other skills. So not necessarily engineering skills, but people skills. And when you're at earlier ages, it's more important to be developing people skills and showing dedication to different things than necessarily focusing on just doing engineering type extracurricular stuff. But obviously I absolutely love Formula Student as well, so I'd recommend that. But then other universities have other projects. So I think one of them was a drones project, which I thought was really cool at my university.
Well, I'm not really scared of you, Elsa, if you're a kickboxer. So I'm going to move quickly onto Rachel. It's that classic part of the CV, isn't it? When you get right to the bottom and it says interests and you sort of and ah, should I put down travel or should I put down running or what should I put? What do you kind of normally put down if you're looking for a job, and what other activities have you participated in?
Yeah, I'm like Elsa. I didn't do Formula Student at university because I struggled with the time, because I also wanted to do lacrosse. So I was captain of my lacrosse team at uni. So I did that a lot, which took up a lot of time. And then I was like, oh, that gives me more of a rounded of the skills, because that's team leading and being part of a team and all of that. Whereas if I was to do Formula Student, which I couldn't have the time for, it was more engineering on top of my engineering degree. And then I also did stuff like running charity events. So it was more like project leading and things like that. So that gave me some more rounded outside of engineering skills, which is always useful to be able to use on the job as well.
A nice mixture. I'm being so tempted to ask Emma what other activities she does, and I can't quite put my finger on it. Anything you do at home? Do you do a lot of competitions with your horses and stuff? I can see by the rosette, so it must be in you to want to compete all the time.
Yeah, although it's definitely a struggle if you're used to working for Mercedes and winning quite a lot when you come back to the real world on your horse and go to places and it goes either not so well or you come back with no pretty ribbons at all. I would definitely like to echo what the others say, that I used to, at my old team, sit with my boss and he was going through CVs, and it really is really important to have things on there that aren't just, oh, I do engineering as a degree and then I do engineering for fun and then I do engineering all the time, which there's nothing wrong with. That's completely who you are as a person, but it's so much more interesting when you're in an interview with someone to know that they'll be able to have conversations with other people, that they've got a passion, that they've got something that they can use as a break from Formula One or from the role that they're trying to take on. Although I am noticing a pattern, because I was also captain of the fencing team at university, but then I was also team leader of the Formula student car, so I'm not entirely sure how I managed to do my degree, but it seems like being a sporty captain must be one of the secret prerequisites.
I'm starting to feel like an underachiever on this chat. Amber, you were nodding your head as well. I imagine you've got lots of other things in your life that keep you sort of enthusiastic about wanting to come to work as well, because that's the other thing. By having lots going on in your personal life and away from work, it actually helps your work life, I find.
Yeah, certainly. So I think like the girls' sports captain, I was captain of the netball team.
Right, that's it. I'm off. See you later.
I think I was also lucky enough to do a Formula Student as well, but I think, like Emma says, it's important to not set only your sights on that. I find Formula Student took up an awful lot of time, and it did then impact on some of my modules that I then had to work harder for. So I certainly, in the interviews, like you say, it's interesting to have those other things, to be able to bring in my netball experience and talking to other people that aren't in a similar degree, because when you come somewhere like this, you need to be able to speak to a range of people who aren't just engineers, and speak to suppliers and talk to all different departments. So it's certainly important to do something that you just really enjoy doing, not just to try and get a career. I still keep up my sports now because I think it really helps with mental health, and just we work in a really high octane environment, and when you get out of here at whatever time you manage to leave on a Friday, maybe you'll have a sit down and a break and watch a movie, but it really helps me getting to the gym, or now I've taken up running, seeing as all gyms are closed. But I think some form of exercise, and I think all of us here, I either see in the gym or in boxing or out for a walk or a run. So I think certainly that is one of my real passions now outside of the sport.
You guys are a scary bunch if you're all boxing. My goodness me. Jess, I have to ask you, what's your magic ingredient in that sort of interest box on your CV? Do you do something equally as amazing and scary as kickboxing or riding or netball and lacrosse?
No, I'm going to bring everyone back down a bit.
I'll join you.
I was not any sports captain. I was the back of the line with running and everything like that. However, Amber has given me a kick and inspired me to go a little bit more running. However, she's very scary on the boxing gloves, so I tackled a bit into the boxing. I'm a very passionate and one-track mind person. Once I've set my goal on being an engineer, there is effectively the whole world is closed to me. I'm very direct like that. I did a lot of work experience. I probably annoyed most of the lower series paddocks, either by turning up, running up and down with my CV, grabbing a spanner and saying, look, I can do this, just, you know, don't have to pay me, just feed me, I'll do everything. And it wasn't just motorsport. So I did a couple of stints in civil engineering. My dad's an engineer, so again, I would annoy him and all of the people who work for him saying, I'm just going to come in summer and just pick your brains and start messing around with stuff and breaking things. So yeah, I'm a little bit different. I love my walking and my hiking and doing just outdoors, really. I'm not really a runner or outdoor sports, but like cycling, canoeing and hiking and bits and pieces like that. So yeah, a couple of years ago, I went to Nepal to do a trek in Nepal, and sadly, we were going up Kilimanjaro in August, but that's been cancelled. So next year.
It sounds like you've got an amazing variety of things that you do, but I think it's also important to note that you don't have to be captain of everything, and you don't have to be the sporty spice of everyone, you know, of all the engineers as well. You can do different things as well. So I think that's really important to notice. But I love the image of you running up and down paddocks with a spanner in one hand and a CV in the other. That is just tenacity personified, Jess. I love it. Charlie Adams has been in touch. Thank you very much for your question. Did you do a degree, apprenticeship, or something else? And which route would you recommend? I know some of you have spoken about Formula Student, and you've mentioned some of the degrees, and I know, Emma, you mentioned a master's, but Amber, perhaps you could just tell us what you did and the actual degrees that you took to get where you are today.
So I always enjoyed maths and physics in school, and so I kept those on for A-level simply because I liked them. I didn't want to have to study something for A-level that I really didn't enjoy. So once I started studying those and saw engineering as a career, maths and physics really helped with that. So I went to Queen's University Belfast and studied mechanical engineering. I stayed on for a master's degree and did a sandwich year in which I did a year in engineering in industry, which was actually with this company. And so I think I was quite lucky that Mercedes offered it, and that it then was able to give me a footing in such a large company, but also whilst still undergrad. So while people would treat me as an engineer and know that I have knowledge, they also knew that I was only a couple of years into studying, and they have 20 years experience and a lot more knowledge than me. So it was a good route to get in, certainly. And I enjoyed my degree. My mechanical engineering degree was a range. So we did modules, much like Emma said, in mechanics and engineering dynamics, modules in electrical engineering. It's a very broad engineering degree, not specialised, and then it means that if I ever was to decide that to leave Formula One, I could go to a range of different engineering companies or sectors with my engineering degree. So that's how I got into it.
Wow. The thing is, when you talk like that, if you haven't started university, it can sound quite daunting. There are a lot of routes you need to sort of know about, and you need to know sort of what follows on from each subject or each degree. I wonder, Elsa, if you could just talk about how you sort of break that down into steps. And I know you mentioned that you didn't really know that the combination of interests you had could form a career path for you, but are people there to help? Because I remember at school being a little bit daunted by the thought of going to university. I suddenly thought I was going to go from like a child to an adult and need to know everything. How did you find that transition from school to university, and what did you do about it?
I found it really difficult because I didn't really know what I wanted to study at university, and I ended up choosing A-levels in subjects like sciences just because I knew that I was good at them. And I think that's quite common for people, just to choose to do things because they're good at them. And then when I started thinking about engineering and I spoke to teachers about it, I did have a lot of teachers come back and imply that they didn't feel that it would be suited for me because I was female, obviously. And so it was a little bit difficult from that point of view, but I decided just to go for it anyway. And one of the big driving things for me to want to do engineering was because it seems like a really exciting subject. When I was reading about the different courses that you can take, it all sounded really interesting. But the other thing is you can use an engineering degree to go on and become a lawyer, or to convert that into doing other subjects. You can even convert it into medicine if you want to. So it's such an interesting degree because it's it's very technical. There's a lot of maths and there's a lot of science in it, but it's also a huge amount of problem solving. And so when applying for jobs afterwards, people absolutely love seeing people with engineering degrees, even if they don't end up becoming an engineer. But I found the biggest thing was to try and just look at things almost one step at a time. So I chose my A levels and they were the subjects that I thought I'd be good at. And then the key was just to make sure I did well in them, and then to apply for my degree. And then when you start your degree, it's such a scary, daunting thing. And the key for me for that was just to make sure, kind of take it a year at a time. So get through that year and get through each semester and get through those exams and the coursework, and then you have a nice break, or you can go and do, I mean, I did work experience in the middle of it in a similar way to what Amber's done. And you kind of just take each step one bit at a time. And then obviously it's important to have a picture of where you want to go from then, but so that you don't get too overwhelmed trying to take
breaking it down.
Yeah.
Because it can look a bit like a sort of insurmountable wall to climb, can't it? Like, find a career, you know, commit to it for 40 years or whatever. It's quite a scary thought when you're sitting at school. It's like, oh gosh, I don't think I can do it. But I think I like that advice of breaking it down 1 year at a time, do your best at every moment so that it'll open all the doors it needs to when the time is right. Of course, you guys work in a fabulous industry, and it's a dream job for so many people. And Chloe has asked, have you got any advice on where to start looking for a career in Formula One? She's currently 21, looking for a career change. Can't believe that at 21, wowza. But she doesn't really know where to start. So Rachel, what would you advise? How do you know, it's not simple. You can't pick up the phone to Toto Wolff and say, hey, I'm ready to go and I'm raring to be an engineer, employ me today. There are lots of people who want to do that, but what's a good way to start interacting with teams and their HR departments?
Well, I guess my way was not the most normal way. I found some from mine, because I'm a materials engineer, and it's not even every team has a materials engineer. So I went on LinkedIn and found all the head of departments that had materials engineers and messaged them all. So that was my way.
That's your equivalent of the spanner in the CV. I like it.
Yeah, just finding people and getting their advice and things like that, and seeing what else you can do.
It's so cliche, isn't it? A lot of people, I'm not an engineer, but I still get asked, you know, how do you get to where you got to or whatever? And there is that cliche of just send emails, just get in touch. And I think people think that's sort of yesteryear. That's how people used to get in touch, or people would turn up in receptions of offices and sit there and wait until the CEO walked past and kind of grab them and say, hey, I'm the one you need to employ. But I do think that still counts for a lot. I think emailing and getting in touch with people and just, you know, keep at them. Don't be annoying, but keep that like a positive conversation going on. Emma, what about you? I know you mentioned that things changed in your career in terms of an opportunity closing, but then having to find a different opportunity. How did that come about? And is it a case of, like, once you're maybe inside the automotive industry or the motorsport industry, there is a movement that can happen?
Definitely so. I found the position at Mercedes because I knew from university days people who worked there who were able to give me kind of the correct person to get in contact with, who could then recommend a job that was about to go up on the website, and that it would be a good fit for me if I applied for it. But I think when you're initially starting out, so I graduated from university, I then spent 2.5 years working in retail in London, about as far away from Formula One as it felt like it was possible to get. And I'd been applying just for straightforward, straight engineering jobs. And I wasn't getting very far with it. I was a graduate. I hadn't been able to do a sandwich year because the only kind of opportunities there were from my university were working in great big diesel manufacturing plants. And I just didn't think it would be that much of a help. And I thought just going straight through university would be more of a benefit. So what I started to do was to apply for jobs in Formula One teams that weren't straight engineering jobs. So my first role in F1 was as a bill of materials coordinator. And the strongest prerequisite was that you had a degree. It wasn't, and if you had an interest in Formula One and it was an academic degree, that was enough to kind of get you an interview for the job. So, and from there, I've managed to move from being a coordinator of things into being a fully blooded engineer. So it was looking at each job that was in F1 that I thought I would be capable of doing, that my degree would be a strength for, but also that I could take my years in retail and kind of go, okay, I haven't worked in engineering for 2.5 years, but here's all the really good stuff that going to a job every day and organization and kind of all the generic stuff you do in every job, and how I could apply that to kind of any other role I could find in F1.
It's when you're at university, it's almost like you just suddenly want to be in that industry doing exactly the job that you've got your heart set on. And Jess, I know you have gone from uni to Formula One straight away. Was there that thought of, I'm going to have to slightly compromise, I might not get the exact role? I think, some people come out of uni and think they're going to be a CEO straight away, but of course we all have to spend some time at the shredder and the faxer back in the day. But, that's really showing my age. But I think, is there that element of, don't panic, work hard, take an opportunity, see where that can lead? Because you've had that amazing step from uni straight into a Formula One team, but did you have to think about, is this the right move for me?
I went to Cranfield University for my master's, and I enjoyed everything. So I found I didn't really have what I'd call a passion. I loved engineering, but I didn't have a passion. And it was actually my course director. I wanted to apply for a job in test and development, where Amber now works. And I looked at the job description and I was like, I'm not sure I can do this. And my course director just went, apply, just see what happens. And I was like, F1 was like, everyone says, oh, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? I was like, okay, in 5 years' time, I want to be able to get into F1. So I came to the interview at Mercedes.
That's scary in itself, isn't it? I mean, to even arrive here, you feel like you're in a special, magical land. So that's the pressure.
It's intimidating, but I'd say everyone's welcoming. They just want to know more about you. They don't, they're not there to grill you or intimidate you. They just want to know, how are you going to react in the job role? And then maybe, I don't know, they bought my interview, and I did 2 years as a graduate test and development engineer. I then did another year in the department, and then I transferred to structural engineering in the stress department. And to be fair, Mercedes are quite good if the jobs are available of transferring between departments if you match the skills in the job description. So I really like staying within the Mercedes family a little bit, and it gives you the skills that I've learned in test and development. I've been able to transfer to stress, and I've actually found I found my calling. I found what I want to do, and I really, really enjoy it. And I can't see myself doing any other job, to be honest. It's cool. I've got a good mix of technical and maths based, but at weekends we also do a lot of race support. So we're looking live at the track data, and I'm the one that has to help Emma with if the suspension does go wrong, figuring out a way of fixing it. So my proudest, not that you've asked me, but I'd like to show off my proudest moment.
Get it out there, come on, share it with the crowd.
A team, I can't disclose, but a team at Hockenheim had a suspension failure, and the previous year we'd seen some, let's say, scary data, and we'd actually designed that load case into the car, which meant that when we saw that happen, we got a call from the chief engineer at track going, is that likely to happen to us? And I could confidently say, unless something's really bad, then no, we're covered. So that was my proudest moment.
That's awesome. No, and I think it's really important. I know you were quite timid and wanting to tell about your great moment, but I think it's very important to share that, because we don't give ourselves enough credit, I think, for the hard work we're putting in. And you mentioned working weekends. This is a full-time job, and I don't think you are absolutely forced to come in on the weekends. I think some people can choose to come, can't they? So that's going that extra mile.
It's completely voluntary. So I do it part of my job because I like to see the full circle. So I produce the loads for the car. The guys design to those loads, and then I've got to check my work effectively. So generally race weekends, I'm like this, going, please go around, please go around. But it's really nice, like Emma says, at the end of that race weekend, when both cars cross the line, hopefully in 1 and 2, you can go, yeah, I love my job. And to be honest, it's not a job, it's a hobby, and you just get paid to do what you love and what to do. So effectively it's a gift that you get to do what you love.
That is, I mean, when we're at school or university and we're all thinking what we want to do, you kind of think, gosh, if I could do what I love, earn enough money to keep myself, fit and healthy and happy, then that's kind of the perfect scenario. So if you've got that, you have nailed the combination. So Georgia Allen has been in touch. Great to have you along with us, Georgia. What would you say is the biggest misconception about your role? And I'm going to choose, well, Rachel, you said some teams don't even have your role. Yeah. So what are some of the teams thinking you're doing? What do you think you're doing? And what do people get wrong about your role?
There's people, because all I've done is materials. I did a materials engineering degree, and I'm a materials engineer, that I have that little bit more knowledge of the subject. Whereas I guess other teams that can't have we've got quite a big team compared to others, and they just do that role a little bit, but do their other role as well. And it just meant that we can excel in the materials area as well, whereas other teams can't so much.
When you tell friends what you do, what do they think you do, and what do you actually do? I always wish friends could see everyone in action.
They think I'm at the races putting tires on cars.
People think I'm a driver, so
they're like, back when we had the pit lane girls and things like that, they're like, oh, so you hold the umbrella for Lewis? I'm like, not quite.
Oh my goodness.
So that's probably the most thing that I could always get asked. Oh, so do you go to the races and do you do this? Do you change the tires? But no, it's more looking at how we're going to improve, make those small marginal changes through materials and through processing and things like that. So,
not wearing a bikini, holding a pole with a number on it. Apologies, we've ruined some dreams there. Sorry. Amber, what about you? What do people think you do, and what do you actually do? What's the biggest misconception, do you think?
I think, much like some of the others here, when you say that you work at Mercedes, people sort of go, oh, okay. And then when you say you're an engineer, it's, oh, you're an engineer, because you're female, you can't possibly be an engineer. And strangely, I only ever experienced that from outside F1. I have never experienced that from within inside. So I think the biggest misconception for me is just not really understanding that there are many females in the roles, and my role is graduate test and development engineer. And I guess maybe people think that I'm given Mickey Mouse projects because I'm a graduate, and that's certainly not the case here. We like to front load very much, and basically if you can handle whatever is thrown at you as a graduate, then you're here and you'll prosper throughout the business. So I think it's been quite good you're given large projects, you're given things that are important, and it doesn't only come down to you. Throughout the whole of Mercedes, we generally have a buddy system. Somebody checks somebody's work, and it doesn't matter how high up you are, whether you're senior or not. It's nice to have somebody else question what you're doing, and so that you can look at it from another point of view, at least. And I think when people hear graduate, they think that I'm probably just making the tea and not doing much else. I can now make a good cup of tea, but
you're multi-skilled, is what you're saying. Yeah. It's tricky. That word graduate, I think, almost makes you think of you still got your learner plates on and you're kind of still getting to grips. But of course, you've got huge experience already and huge knowledge to have got in through the gates at Brackley here. So we've got some lovely questions. Thank you so much. I hope we're kind of covering a lot of them, talking about, what makes people stand out in personal statements and applying for jobs. So Tyler Robinson's asked, what do universities look for in personal statements when applying for engineering degrees? Jess, what do you think is important to include? What do you leave out and save for interviews potentially? Because you also want to kind of dazzle people and catch them off guard, don't you?
It's quite important to let them know that you've actually understood the job role and how you think you'll fit the job role and what your expertise will show. But I also think it's a good chance, especially in a personal statement, to show a little bit your personality. And like the other guys have said, that you don't just do engineering, you do other things. And like Emma said, she had the retail experience, which showed interpersonal skills and things like that. It's showing that you are fit for the role and you can really contribute to the team and really make an impact. So I think it's just a way of, the CV is a very like scripted, technical information document, whereas at least your personal statement should show a little bit about you, that you're different to everybody else, and that, you know, you're not just going to sit there like a robot doing your work, really.
Because it's a fun place to work, isn't it? I mean, as we've spoken about, this is like dream scenario, an amazing sport to be involved in, an amazing industry. What about you, Emma? What would you advise people to sort of convey in personal statements and interviews like that?
I would say for personal statements, and the same would be true for covering letters, would be to don't just copy and paste the same one for every single job you're applying for, and even a little bit with your CV. Kind of look at the job role, go through the CV, maybe reprioritize things that, so you have your 10 things that you've listed, but think, well, actually, they might be slightly more interested in this one. I'll move it up to the top of the list. And for your personal statement or for your covering letter, like Jess said, really understand the role, break it down into, there will always be something, especially when you're just starting out, that you'll think, oh, I don't actually know if I can do that bit. But focus on the bits where you think, I can either definitely do that, or I can apply something that I've already done, be it working in a chess shop or working in Formula Student, or just surviving your degree, and take kind of some examples where you can go, through doing this, I believe I have shown that I have X, Y, Z, whatever qualities that they've put that they're looking for in the role. Anything you can take from things you have actually done and use it as an example to strengthen your case for why you can do what they're asking you to do. It's much more important to focus on that than going, oh, I know you've asked for this, but I haven't done it. Never mention the things that you haven't done, or highlight the things which you think might be your weaknesses, because they will ask you that in the interview, when you get the interview. They will ask you, well, how do you feel about this part of the role? And you can do the whole, oh, I'm super willing to learn and I'm really confident I'll be able to take it on. But they will look at your strengths and go, okay, she's got all of this. We can create the missing piece ourselves.
Well, I'm feeling super positive, super motivated. It has been absolutely fabulous talking to you all. Thank you to everyone who's been watching and submitting questions. I hope we've covered a range of topics and got through as many as we possibly could. Rachel, Jess, Amber, Emma, Elsa, what a pleasure to talk to you all. Such high achievers already. Who knows where your careers are going to lead you? And thank you so much for giving us a little bit of an insight into what it's like being a woman in engineering. Thank you so much to everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.